supposed to be doing a thing on your book.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I didn't want to disturb you because you really were in your groove.
Okay, well, hey, let me...
I apologize to your Binnenbau.
No, I apologize. I didn't do it, man.
Don't blame me either.
Don't blame me. It wasn't me. It was...
No.
Okay. Got that straight. Let me say this, since you've introduced the word, and since I was fooling around with the thing, this is the Binnenbau.
Yes.
And after you've been playing capoeira, Angola, capoeira Haitian now for 40-some years, sometimes you feel like you want to play the Binnenbau, especially on a gray day like we're having here in LA. But that's not why we're here.
No.
And so I'm going to put this over to this side.
Okay.
Don't go anyplace. I'm coming. I'm going to put this over to this side and get into the reason why it is that we're doing this. And since that was your idea too, I'm going to start at the beginning. We were talking about books I've written and recently published books. And we thought it would be sort of like a good idea to sort of do a little rundown of the last 5. 5. The last 5 books, and you know, offer some brief maybe insights about what they're about, what they might mean, and so forth and so on. So that's what I'm doing. Okay. Before I start off into my rant,
yes, please.
Are there any specific questions you'd like to have answered before I start?
Just why are you a writer?
Well, let me take a sip of my lemonade first.
All right.
That's called a pause for consideration. Well, I hate to get racial about this, but I really have no choice. Early on, when I realized what my position as a black man in America was doomed to be, I was on the verge of killing somebody. Like in my teen years, maybe it has something to do with living on the south side of Chicago, or going to an all-black school, high school, and all of that. But I really felt like I was going to commit murder because so many white people had pissed me off, especially in Chicago. You know, where they have segregated areas where if you cross Roosevelt Road, you live on Taylor and Roosevelt Road. If you cross the street, you could wind up in a neighborhood that would be dangerous for you.
I do remember you telling me about Two-Gun Pete kicking you.
Well, that was the black on black crime, because this was a policeman. I'm glad I talked to you about him. It was a policeman who had killed 11 black people. And people said that they deliberately put him into black areas in order to tamp down black violence. Well, he obviously didn't do that. He espoused black violence. So the writing thing came about as a way of relief from the oppression. At the same time, it was a release of expression. I grew up listening to the radio, and under the beautiful guardianship of 2 people named Miss Sweet and Mr. Jimmy, who were like foster grandparents, who had me listen to the radio with them. You know, come on in here. They call me Paul because I was such a wise little man. Come on in here, the story's on. So, you know, there's Sherlock Holmes and the Great Gildersleeve and, you know, radio. So I think I learned how to write. I learned how to write from listening to the radio, but I was encouraged to write by the circumstances around me.
Plus, I guess, finding the library.
That helped a magnificent amount. I was living on the west side on Washburn Avenue, in an area not far removed, not very far distant from an area called Jewtown, that was named Jewtown by the Jewish merchants who did business there. It wasn't some stamp that somebody, this is Jewtown, the ghetto. No, it was a business area, Halsted and Maxwell Street. And I can remember walking through this area. Matter of fact, I was born in Jewtown. I was born at the Maxwell Street Clinic. I'm walking through the street, cold day in Chicago, which can get colder than any place in the known world, trust me. I mean, on many levels.
Other than the Arctic.
And I wanted to get closer. I saw this open, they call them vestibules. I saw this open door over this building, and I went inside. I was trying to get warm, and you know, I heard, I never will forget it. There's a tune by Tchaikovsky, I think, called Dream Girls. Da da dee da, da dee da da dee, da dee da dee da, da 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 dee. Pardon me for being off key, but I'm not a singer. Anyway, I heard the sound of the piano, and I went upstairs to where it was and opened a door. And the room was filled with books. Filled with books. I mean, books everywhere. So I ran in and I tried to grab 3 or 4 and sit down at a seat. Nobody there but me. Anyway, the librarian, who was a wonderful Jewish lady named Miss Frankenstein or something like that, Frankstein, she, you know, smiled and, you know, have at it. Within a couple of weeks, she allowed me to get a library card, which I probably shouldn't have had at 12, something like that. I was about 12.
Yeah.
But she said, you know, you don't have to sit here and try to read 3 or 4 books at the same time. You can take some home. I was living in a Mary's basement, and, you know, we were wonderful people and very shrewd and very smart, but people were not very much into books. So here I am sitting behind the coal stove, this big potbelly stove, reading 3 books at one time.
And then your Aunt Mary told you.
Well, she had ideas about what reading would do to you.
What did she say?
What did she say? I've told you. I told you enough times.
She said you go crazy.
You go crazy. Watch and see.
Okay, so there she is.
All the books are gonna drive you crazy. I love my Mary. But from that point on, you know, if you start reading enough stories, and the further encouragement to writing was the fact that I was surrounded by 4 uncles, including my daddy, who were wonderful storytellers. Uncle Eugene, Uncle John, Uncle Percy, Uncle 3, yeah, and then my father, 4. And these men told stories. It's funny because they were the usual storytellers, but Aunt Mary and her girlfriends could tell a tale too. So I think in many ways that's how it started, but it was not the only catalyst. It was, you know, a lot of other things. You hear, when I used to listen to Oscar Brown Jr. a lot, who fell in love with the same thing that I fell in love with, and many other people did too. You know, there were people who had cries, yeah, rise no land, yeah, right no land. I said, well, who is that? The Rags and Old Lion. He was buying rags and old lion. And of course, watermelon, sweet like a watermelon, round and right. Come on, get you a watermelon so you can eat tonight. Watermelon! I carried watermelon for a while, very heavy. You know, 10, 12-pound-year-old boy carrying a 8-pound watermelon up to the 4th floor, and somebody said, I don't want that one, I want that other one. You know, so, okay. Stories. In addition, on my father's side, coming from the Mississippi, the Yazoo, Mississippi Storytellers Union, and on my mother's side, coming from the Helena that's about 2 or 3 miles from Little Rock. Coming from that storytelling tradition, I think it just fused up in me. You know, to the point where at one point I almost couldn't tell the truth. I just lied about everything.
Everything was fiction.
It all became fiction. You know, why would
reality is too much, so I'm going to deal in fiction.
I mean,
I'm going to live in fiction. I'm going to live in fiction.
Reality is dull. You know?
Okay. All right, so what do you have for us tonight?
So what I have wound up with over the course of the last, not just since the pandemic set in, but prior to that, I wound up with a number of books. And I'm using this one. I could start on with a number of other ones, but I'm using this one as a starting point. I wrote a book called The Snake, and I wrote the sequel to The Snake, which is called The Snake 2020. The cover design is by my very good friend, the wonderful artist, Cedric Adams. And I claim to be the originator of a genre that I'm calling the Pan-African Occult. And the reason why I put it that way is because after having read a lot of zombie books and Bela Lugosi and Frankenstein and all the rest that were supposed to be reflections of our supernatural, I discovered, no, that's not a reflection of my supernatural, of our supernatural, because we come out of a tradition of haints. We come out of a tradition of, I think in Jamaica they call them ebooks. No, that's the Yiddish tradition, ebooks. But the point being, we are not just simply out of a European tradition of a belief in the supernatural. And snakes have played a great part in it. So I call the book The Snake, and it deals with what might have happened if a very great Bokor, some people might say shaman, some people might want to call it some other name, if this Bokor had cast a curse on an African slave trader, dealer, in some place like Cote d'Ivoire, or maybe what they used to call the Gold Coast, Ghana, or Benin or Togo, if he had cast a spell, a curse on the people who were taking his people away. And this curse survived in the New World. That includes Brazil, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and of course New York and Mississippi. And the story is about what happened as a result.
And there's also their filmmaker in that story, isn't it?
That's what the story. I'm using a filmmaker, not Spike Lee, please, not Spike Lee. This is somebody totally different. This is somebody who knows how to write very well.
So the book encompasses curses.
So the book is like an outline for the film that he wants to write, or what he wants to do. First of all, he wants to write this book, which I've done for him, and then he will take this book and create a film
called My Father's Eyes.
This book that I have.
Yes.
The film he wants to write is called
My Father's Eyes.
My Father's Eyes. No, My Grandfather's Eyes.
My Grandfather's Eyes. I stand corrected. Yes, my grandfather.
Because he wants to some area of this world to see some facets of this world through his grandfather's eyes.
Yes.
And of course, that is very un-Hollywood-like, and it provokes a lot of discussion and manipulation.
Well, it'll be very interesting. It's a bit of a Faustian tale, you say? Bit of a Faustian tale.
Yes, well, you know,
right.
you want something, you got to give something.
There you go.
And I'm not going to suggest what he gave or what he's asked to give.
Mm-hmm.
Ancestral Meridians, I seem to be kind of involved with things that have to do with what happened before and how it came to be as it trickled down the ancestral scale.
Mm-hmm.
Ancestral Meridians, and it's the cover is by my friend Song-Hee Park.
Mm-hmm. And zoom into it. There we go. And can you move it up a little bit? There we go. Yeah. All right. That gives us quite a view of it. All right. Tell us about.
Okay, in line of being now and then, I'm going to say that this has feet in both camps, both now and then. I think I'm going to need some glasses sooner or later to begin writing of this thing.
Okay.
So
well,
while I'm talking about this,
I will.
I wonder if I could ask you to
yes, I will.
look around and see if you can find a pair of glasses that fit my eyes.
I certainly will.
Be careful that you don't step over the moon and wind up in a star cluster that will not allow you to return to the scene anytime soon. Straddle the astral horse, and there you go, riding away into the sunshine. Ancestral Meridians comes out of an experience I had from having acupuncture. For those who've had acupuncture and benefited from it, you know that it's a very interesting kind of experience, or at least for the first time, if you've never had it. In my case, I was in a Taekwondo class, and my master, Yonkyo Kim, and his, thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
I had a back injury one night in the class. I was probably kicked down so hard that I thought I was paralyzed. The next day I went to the dojang and spoke to the master's first time teacher, first rate teacher, instructor Raymond Da Silva, and told him about my back, and he sent me to a man named Mr. Yang Pil-ro, who didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak very much Korean. But he gave me a sheet with a body on it and asked me to shade in what the problem was. And I shaded in the whole back. And he went to work. After about, I think, the 30th, he wasn't using electronic controlled needles. He was doing his by hand very precisely and beautifully. I mean, it was like just hearing feeling the little prick of maybe of a mosquito, which you can barely feel anyway. And I think after about the 30th one, I went into one of the deepest sleeps I've ever been in. Talk about sedative. I went into this sleep, I call it the abyss. And what, half an hour later, I came out of it. I felt a little bit better. I could move my shoulders. I mean, my back was completely in bad shape. After 3 visits, at the time, this was 1979 or so, after 3 visits at $10 per visit, I was healed. I went back to Taekwondo and, looked to see whether or not I could do it again. Run across here. What you just saw was the lady who runs the camera running in front of the camera. I was just talking about the acupuncture thing, which you've had many times.
Great believer in it. Great believer. Get you a good acupuncturist and you'll get a good vacation. For about
It
20
does
or
give
40
you that
minutes.
when you are dealt with by the best. I think it is that. It's just, I'm calling it a sedative. But a sedative unlike any one I could ever think of, because I can't think of any bad side effects. I mean, you don't have wind up with acid in your stomach or headaches or whatever. Anyway.
Get up from the table or bed and you feel like you can conquer the world.
That's the feeling. Yeah. That's what I was just saying. After my third thing, I went back into Taekwondo, you know, ready to...
For more damage.
And believe me, after 6, 7, 8 years of it, I got enough to last me a lifetime.
There you go.
But while I was there, going through that experience, I thought about acupuncture as a way of ascending or descending into other frames of reference spiritually. And I let it take me from that table, that gurney we were lying on to receive acupuncture. It allowed me to take myself to ancient Egypt.
Where they did acupuncture.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
your research, yeah.
The Chinese record showed they were doing acupuncture with stone.
Wow.
I don't know what that might have been like, but it has proven itself to be effective all the way up to the point after many, many years, the VA and some other government agencies have decided to include acupuncture as a part of their treatment plan. So the story that happened in this book, Ancestral Meridians, comes out of having had acupuncture, and I feel benefited from it. Today, if I had a headache that didn't respond to a couple of ibuprofen, I would immediately run to the acupuncture. You know, so there's a lot more that could be said about it, but it would take a long time to really say all that needs to be said about it. I would suggest to anybody, if you're interested in Ancestral Meridians, that you cop a copy.
And it's a quick read.
And it's a quick read. The book is only...
One moment, please.
169 pages.
Oh, there you
You
go.
can read it in half an hour.
Okay.
Now, we get into something a little bit thicker,
Just a little.
as you can see.
How many pages is that?
This book, oh my God. This book with huge font. I think it's 15 font or something.
Nah,
like
I think it may be 14, but...
This book is 734 pages long. But it had to be that long because, oh, incidentally, I should mention also that this particular cover was done by my friend Tony Gleason,
Yes, there
a
we go.
superb artist, as you can see.
There we go.
And I'm going off into I'm going off into tricky ground here because the book is not so much about bullfighting as it is about circumstances that happen in the bull ring. And the bull ring, symbolically, in this case, could be any area of life that you feel yourself in, where you've been faced, or that you are facing two horns and a huge animal that might be called circumstances beyond our control, that you have to learn how to deal with. Or as the Spanish word says, you have to aguantar.
Aguantar.
You have to stick it out. After having studied the bullfight and not been an aficionado, I have to honestly admit that. Aficionados go to Colombia, they go to Peru, they go to Spain when the latest phenomenon shows up, Jose Tomas is is at the Ventas in Madrid.
And they joined.
Los Aficionados de Los Angeles.
Así,
Okay, Zola Salena, the mysterious voice that tripped past us a few minutes ago, became members of Los Aficionados in order to be a part of a mindset that I would not normally have encountered if I just simply ran around saying, okay, I want to study something about the bullfight, but I didn't know anything about the people who love bullfighting. I had not seen any videos or current movies about bullfighting. So that supplied the...
Well, the first one that you wrote caused me to get bitten by this interest.
By the gusano, they call it, by the worm.
By the worm, yes. And so the more, at least at our last meeting, I didn't cover my eyes and cringe as I did it the first time.
I have to say this in self-defense. I'm only speaking for myself.
Yes.
I can't speak for you. Different people have different experiences spiritually and mentally and emotionally about what the bullfight is about and what it does to them. Some people say it's animal torture. Someone says it's an encouragement for a human being to face animal ferocity and not flinch. Or they can say it's an opportunity for you to see what is inside of yourself.
Yeah.
Are you willing to face an unreasonable 1,500 pound animal with horns that can go through you and come out the other side? Are you willing to face the truth of yourself? Are you willing to be truthful with yourself? The most honest bullfighters are those who are scared to death. Every time they go to fight the bull, they confess it.
No doubt.
They call it, the song, Macarena. Da, 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 da. Some bullfighter nicknamed it the pants wetting song because it means that he get ready to go out into the unknown and you may not come back the same way you went out.
Yeah.
Some other people might look at this book as an analogy of the circumstances African Americans live in America. That is to say, we are being charged by the bull all day long. And as we know, many African Americans are killed by the bull's horns all day long, every day, ever since we were brought to this country. But still we stand up with the cape in hand and we
Aguantar.
We Aguantar. And of course, we are winning more than we ever won, despite the fact that it seemed like sometimes when you wind up with a would-be dictator who wants to put you back, you have to fight a little harder. So until the end of the world, trust me, African Americans all over the New World and then wherever else you find them will always be fighting to attain equality in front of whatever the circumstances arrive in front of us. And there's more that could be said about a book this thick, and I'm not going to try to do it. But there you go.
I do love in the section that you talk about in Mexico where they're eating food from the Incas. Okay, and that, so there's a bit of history as well as fiction within that book.
Well, all people who honor their ancestors, all people, everywhere, will always explain to you if you're willing to ask them why you're doing that. They say because they have not gone anywhere other than someplace else, but they're still here, whether they're in your memory, or they're in that corner, or they're curling up from some incense you lit this morning, or whatever. So the Mexicans, I think, descended from those indigenous people that the Spanish found there whether it be Toltec, Mextec, Aztec, or whatever, seem to feel that the sacrifice of a bull has something to do with their ancestral background. They weren't fighting bulls before the Spanish brought it there, but then the Spanish had a great tradition of honoring their ancestors. So we go back and back and back no matter where we go. We're all people who came from a common source, the ocean. Now, conversations with Likka Sto Rufus. I'm going to read a little bit from this book. The book, the catalyst for the book came from circumstances that are both easy to understand and hard to understand. I was a soldier in the Army. I was drafted, a reluctant draftee. 1962, I served my time from 1962 to 1964. I got in before it got really, really bad, and I got out before it got really, really, really bad. Because as we all know, 65, I believe, is when they started sending people to Vietnam to be killed.
64, 65. By the way, who's the cover?
This cover,
yes, that cover,
is by none other than our friend Carlos Spivey. Can I pronounce his name right? Spivey.
I think so.
S-P-I-V-E-Y.
Let me see it, the cover.
And this is the cover he did for me.
There we go. Okay. Tell me about it.
Okay. I'd also like to make mention of the fact that Professor Justin D. Gifford at the University of Nevada wrote a very gracious back cover blurb, and I'll start off reading that.
Okay, it's University of Nevada at Reno.
At Reno.
Yeah.
Where else would it be? Yes, you're right, at Reno.
Okay.
Set against the background of the COVID crisis and the 2020 presidential election, conversations with Likka Sto Rufus follows the incredible story of Melvin Montaigne Dixon III, a.k.a. Likka Sto Rufus. The novel tracks Rufus's harrowing journey as a tunnel rat in the jungles of Vietnam, a prisoner behind bars at San Quentin, and a dope fiend on the streets of Los Angeles. Recounting 50 years of black history from the ground level through the eyes of Rufus, Conversations is ultimately a protest of the legacies of white supremacy in the age of Trump. It is written in the witty, urban style we've come to expect from Odie Hawkins, and it is why he is known as the UndergroundMaster.
I see.
So that's what he's saying. The book has a lot in it, but I just like to read a few pages.
Oh, it has pictures.
Oh my God! Does it have pictures?
Yes, it does.
These pictures were taken by none other than the inimitable Zola Salena-Hawkins.
Yes.
I was wondering if you were going to be slipped by not saying anything about that and be your usual modest self.
Well,
but you didn't.
You're rubbing off on me.
Okay. Claim credit where credit is due, or you will get no credit at all.
There you go.
I'm on page 5. The deep, gravelly voice coming out of this little guy was like hearing Red Fox again. This is a guy named Likka Sto Rufus, and we'll get into that after you've read it, who is standing, I guess you might say, panhandling. Not directly in front of Likka Sto, but just a few steps to the left. The would-be, he has, as you can see, I Am Black History
On his, yeah.
in front of it, on his mask. Brother Black History was still in place. There was something about the look he gave me over the top of his mask that drew me to him. I strolled over to him, curling a dollar bill up in my right palm. I felt that I had to give him something. Maybe it was because he looked so proud, so distinctive. He looked down at my outstretched hand, checked the bill, and shook hands with me. I was about to walk away from him when I was halted by this deep, gravelly voice. "So what am I supposed to do with this, big shot?" The deep, gravelly voice coming out of this guy was like hearing Red Fox again. I missed a step, got stalled would be a better description. I felt like I was being made to reply to a reasonable question. I turned and walked back to face Brother Black History from a safe distance, of course. I'm sorry, what was your question? I didn't bite my tongue. I asked you, what am I supposed to do with this? He held the curled up dollar bill in his hand like it was something nasty. I wanted to answer his question, but I couldn't think of a decent answer. I stood there trying to process the situation. This guy was a panhandler, a beggar, if you want to get crude about it, and he was questioning my rationale for giving him $1, only $1. I couldn't figure out what to say to him, so I added a $5 bill to his $1 bill. There, how's that? Yeah, that's better. He growled at me. I felt the urge to go sarcastic on him. So what are you going to do with your newfound wealth? I wasn't prepared to hear the serious tone in his gravelly voice. Well, it'll give me enough to get Tarzan. Tarzan? Who's Tarzan? Tarzan is my cat. It'll give me enough to get Tarzan a couple of cans of good cat food, buy myself a lottery ticket, and a bag of organic figs, apples from Trader Joe's. I think I want to hear a cold beer at the end of his recitation. But that was it. That was his answer to my sarcastic question. I felt like nipping his I Am Black History mask off his face to take a look at the grinning face behind the mask. What was he grinning? I decided to leave well enough alone. I was opening my car door when one of the liquor store gang staggered up to me. Uh-oh. More stuff to deal with. I was about to tell her, sorry, sweetheart, I already gave at the office. A full-figured, middle-aged woman, somebody's grandmother, she spoke up in a soft soprano. Don't mind Likka Sto, baby. He been like that ever since he showed up. Why do you call him Likka Sto? Well, look yonder. You see that guy standing over there next to the drugstore? Yeah, I see him. Well, his government name is Rufus. But since he was handling the drugstore, people started calling him Drugstore Rufus. Handling? You know, asking people for money. Oh. So when this brother shows up handling in front of Likka Sto, people start calling him Likka Sto Rufus. What's his real name? She shrugged her shoulders and staggered back to the circle. It was the first time I had actually spoken with any bona fide member of the Likka Sto gang. I could have said she was the second member after Likka Sto, but I had to put in a different category. He wasn't one of the gang. Now, is what's going on. It's an urban tale, but it has international consequences and application. For example, the Likka Sto may or may not have a wife and 2 sons in Australia. But I don't want to spoil anybody's...
Or may not have been a tunnel rat in Vietnam.
That's true too. So like I said, each one will have to decide for himself.
Yeah.
what is and what isn't.
Exactly.
Okay, that's that. Likka Sto Rufus. Ghetto Sketches. Oh my goodness. Ghetto Sketches with this cover, I think that is marvelous by none other than
Tony.
Tony Gleason.
There we go.
Once again, I'll read the back cover because Justin D. Gifford, the University of Nevada, hey,
Yes.
together with Iceberg Slim's Pimp, The Story of My Life, and Donald Goins' Dope Fiend, Odie Hawkins' Ghetto Sketches pioneered the genre of street literature during the Black Power movement. Set against the backdrop of a vibrant black urban community, the novel follows the diverse stories of pimps, junkies, preachers, revolutionaries, and everyday working people. Written in the vernacular of the streets and working with experimental literary forms reminiscent of modernists Ralph Ellison and James Baldwin, Hawkins' brilliant novel studies the lives of Black Americans struggling with police brutality, poverty, and institutional racism. A lyrical and gritty novel, the revised Ghetto Sketches 2021, it is required literature for any reader of 20th century African American fiction. I'm not going to go through the gambling scene. I'd like to take two samples out of the book that give you an idea of the range of what's happening in the book. This is chapter 8. Uh-huh. 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 Huh? Uh-huh. 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 No! Got that?
Yes. Obviously a conversation between two.
Well, at least between one person and the other person. The other piece that I'd like to read here is something called Africanthropus erectus. And this is a marvelous piece of work, I think, that was done by, once again, none other than Zola Salena-Hawkins.
Alright. I'm not sure. You'll just have to.
Got that?
I think I did, but
Okay.
okay. Well, considering with this Halloween is coming.
That's the reason I picked
Okay,
it.
hold it right there. Hold it right there. You know. Oops, one more time. All right, there we go. We got it. Let's go. Go ahead.
Africanthropus erectus. Deep in the guts of shadowed back steps, shrouded by pitch-thin hallways, fumbling rats and benign neglect, the dark baby boy screwed his slender face into a crisscross knot, tightened the cord on his bubble vein, and impatiently waited his turn. The thin, flayed arm, traced to the wrist with sullen bite from the angry needle, slowly settled itself by the side of his slim, dark body, stung by the horse. There were no grass-bound lawns, romping dogs, or indulgent parents shedding social tears over his dry little frame. No concerned society to mourn him, no informative pieces in life or look. Just a mean clutch of men from downtown, bending stiffly to snatch the smoking spike from his silent limb, smiling secret at the thought of another nigger gone. Bam! So those are poems from the book. I would like to take a moment or two to read one other little piece that is more prosy than poemsy, but I can't seem to find it. So I'm going to stop.
You look at the table of contents?
Well, I'm going to stop looking for it and go to the foreword, which I think is more important than anything else. But before I go to the foreword, let me just simply say this. This is the prologue. I think this is important. Ghetto Sketches was my first protest novel. I think that sounds pontifical enough.
Mm-hmm.
As an optimist, I hoped that it would be my last, but the history of life in our country prevented that from happening. Ghetto Sketches was originally published by Holloway House Publishing Company in 1972. It was not seriously promoted, but it sold well. I can say that because my in-house sources gave me documented evidence of how well the book was selling. I can't say that my royalties were honest reflections of those sales. They cooked books like you would be tossing something in a wok. Fast forwarding. Holloway House sold its assets to Kensington Press in the 1990s, including sketches. I petitioned via my unions, the Authors Guild, the National Writers Union, and the Screenwriters Guild West, for a reversion of rights for all of my originally published works by Holloway House. Subsequently, Ghetto Sketches were reissued with a new cover.
Mm-hmm.
Not this cover, but another cover.
Right.
I felt that some of the circumstances, the subject matters in the book were too dated to merit further marketing. Fortunately, it seems that Zola Salena-Hawkins and several other lobbyists agreed that I was partially correct, but squashed my attempt to place the book in retirement. Look, man, it may be an antique, but as you know, antiques gain value with age. We think that the sketches fit that category. So, as they say, my protest fell on deaf ears. Ergo, the Ghetto Sketches 2021.
Fantastic.
That's the prologue. Now, we got this thing, I must say, that Dr. Margaret Burroughs did for me, that I'll always be grateful for, because she said what she said because she meant what she said.
And she used the book in her King's
Many
College.
classes. She was at the Kennedy King. Also, she was teaching at Cook County Prison for a long time, Cook County Jail. I'm noting here that Dr. Margaret Burroughs went home on Sunday, December 21st, 2010. This foreword was included in the second edition of Ghetto Sketches, which was published in January 2002. The DuSable Museum of African American History, which is what her address was when she passed. As an art teacher at DuSable High School, Chicago, Illinois, I can say that I feel privileged and fortunate to have had so many talented students in my classes. Odie Hawkins is one of many hundreds who have fulfilled the dreams I had for them by virtue of hard work and perseverance. She wouldn't allow you just to be considered just you. In my art class, I found Odie writing a nasty little story for a friend who had given him a 50-cent commission for the job. As a seasoned teacher, it was quite obvious that he wasn't doing the work assigned to the class. He was doing something else. I plucked the sheets of paper from his surprised fingers and read it. He was embarrassed, and I was pleasantly surprised. Whatever the short story was about, I can't recall now. It was liberally laced with profanity. But beyond that, it was interesting, showed a certain kind of style. Years later, he told me how surprised he was about my reaction. Instead of punishing him in any way, I recommended a writing workshop that a friend of mine was leading at the Community Center on 51st and South Parkway, Martin Luther King Drive now. He was a teenager meeting with adults, and I think after a few sessions, their sophistication overwhelmed him. But he continued writing and often showed me his work. Several English teachers will always have a check mark next to their name because they accused this young writer of plagiarism. He was not plagiarizing. He was exploring his own creative hemispheres. I gave him a ream of paper for the summer school vacation and told him to write. He wrote his first novel that summer, an extravagantly structured work about the Peps, a popular dance hall on 47th Street near St. Lawrence Avenue. The Peps that he wrote about was dance music, an atmosphere brimming with fire and teenage hormones. He came to me 2 weeks after the semester started, looking miserable, to tell me that his then girlfriend had stolen the novel and was accusing him of having a relationship with another girl based on her misreading of his manuscript. So, as far as I know, she may still have the manuscript. That might be her calling now. I don't think so, but maybe. Perhaps it is true that youth is wasted on the young. Odie graduated from DeSalle in 1956, pretended to go to Wilson Junior College for most of a year, and continued loading up the material for writing life. Always visiting me or writing me. I like that. The fact that he has always made an effort to stay in touch. He moved to Los Angeles in 1966 and became active in the Watts Writers Workshop. Within a year or so, he was seriously involved in the Hollywood business, writing scripts, television scripts, always returning periodically to Chicago to visit his family and to update me on his activities. A fellow traveler like myself, we had a brief reunion in Ghana in 1994, where he lived in the early 1990s, and I was once again leading a tour group. I would like to say that I've read each of his published books from cover to cover, but I've been too busy to do that. I have read the Ghetto Sketches from cover to cover several times because the book is that compelling. Wow, thank you, Dr. Burroughs. I made it a part of my curriculum at Kennedy King, and I've used it in writing classes in Cook County Jail. Odie has dug deeply into the cultural nuances of our lives in his Ghetto Sketches. We are taken into the lives of people who produce the language and the groove, if you will, of this special environment. Yes, the action and the work happens in the ghetto in Chicago, but the characters are not superficially stereotypical and the situations are universal. Situations that all of us must cope with at some point in our lives. How to handle the stress of this technological life. What to do about relationships between men and women, men and men, women and women, the young and the old. He doesn't spend much time belaboring the obvious problems that exist because of institutional racism. He gives us credit for having the intelligence to know that racial ghettos wouldn't exist if racism was dead. In a few instances where the price of things and services are mentioned, Sweet Peter Dita's hoes, for example, we are made aware that the first issue of the book took place years ago, but the circumstances of the lives of the people in Ghetto Sketches reflecting the lives of millions of Americans today is right on the money. Odie Hawkins has borne honest witness for us, and I feel pleased and gratified to think that I played a role in this work, a piece I'm sure will be considered a classic.
Ashe.
Ashe indeed.
Okay.
And on that note,
well, one thing I wanted to mention is that Zola Salena-Hawkins did the research for the beginning of the book.
and that is you right here on the
Right.
Can you see yourself?
Okay,
in
and
that
also
nice blue?
and also included photos within the book. Okay.
Listen to her. She's speaking up for herself. There was a time when you would have said
You're rubbing off on me.
nothing. Who did the pictures? Who? Let me show you one of them, for example. Who did the photos in the book? This is Dr. Burroughs' front gate
Mm-hmm. Let me see.
I used to call it the Hope Place.
The Hope Place.
Where you went, where you had some hope.
Ah, all right. Let's see. I'm not sure if I can get it clearly. A little bit more. There we go. That's as clear as we can get it. And if anybody wants to see it better, they need to buy the book.
That's right. That's right. You
Okay.
can look at it up close. Up close.
And all of your books can be purchased either at Author House, iUniverse, at Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble's website, or if you go into your local bookstore and ask for a book by Odie Hawkins and provide the name, they can obtain the book for you.
Appreciate that.
Also,
Appreciate
it's the books are ebooks as well as paperback.
And I don't know what else can be said right now. I'm going to go back to playing my beer and bow.
All right.
But I'd like to say to you,
Miss.
check it out, Alfred. Check it out.
All of our friends. Ciao.
Ciao indeed.